one of the best experiences of my life. I loved shooting Lucky Louie, and I bombed every rehearsal. Like I would do well in front of the audience, but I was obsessed with HBO was going to fire me. Me and Laura Keitlinger were always commiserating on how fucking HBO was going to fire us. We suck. They're going to cancel. And I would bomb in every rehearsal. I would just die. And I was like, they're going to cut me. They're going to cut me. And then luckily it would work in front of the audience.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Man,
for all the executives.
that's funny to hear because you kill on that show, you know?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it wound up going good. I guess because I had done it a few times, like in run throughs. But I in front of the executives, the writers, I would fucking tank. It was the worst dread for me was the run throughs, even more than the live shows were the run throughs. Because like Carolyn Strauss and all the HBO bosses would just be kind of sitting there watching. Okay. And I was constantly obsessed with getting fired. I'm like, she hates me. And then I found out that Carolyn was one of my biggest advocates behind the scenes. Louie told me, "Oh, she loves you. She's always pushing for you to do more." So yeah, it's funny how we think one thing and it turns out that people watching are thinking something totally different.
I always think that. I always think like, oh, this guy hates me. And then later on a podcast, they're like, that guy was great. And you're like, oh, fuck, I thought this guy hated me, you know?
Yeah. I've had guys, oh, sorry, Dean. I've had guys tell me that too, like younger guys like Sam Morrill and Mark Norman, because I wouldn't talk to them at the Cellar for a long, but it wasn't because I didn't like them. It was because I have low self-esteem. And I'm like, those guys have a clique and I don't have like, they're not going to want to hear from me. Like, you feel like I have nothing that people want. Like, so I would always feel like I love those guys. I'm like, you guys thought I didn't like you? That's fucking crazy, but my own insecurity.
Well, comedy has definitely that world, especially at the Cellar. Once I got past there, I was like, oh, no one likes me. You just don't know where you fit in. I'll just sit over in this booth on my own. I'm that LA fag, LA doesn't have real comics. That's hacky shit or whatever. So I'm over there just trying to be as good as I can. And then later on, a lot of it is your own insecurity and you're just trying to fit in, and it's such a high pressure. Just people don't understand the Cellar and the Store are like such fucking throttles, you're like, oh my God, I gotta be good every time,
And because most of the people on the show too. It's always weird. Like, a lot of my friends go on, I'll do the Store once in a while when I'm out there, but I know almost, 80% of the people on the lineup I know from doing gigs or whatever. And it's always weird when you see people on the opposite coast when you don't live there. Like they're so happy in the radio studio, but then you bump into them and like, oh, hey man, what are you doing? You out here for a while? Okay. Which is the comedian's way of saying, I don't know what else to say to you. So how long are you out for? Like, that's just,
that's a classic.
It's the comic communication way of going, a lot of crazy shit going on. Like, when you're stalling in front of an audience, that's how we stall with it. And it's not to be dicks, but we don't know what else to say. Are you here for a while? Hoping that will spark something.
Yeah. It's so true, man. It's so true. What do you remember? I always love to talk to guys like you because you're 30 years in. One of the things I remember quite well was falling in love with Lucky Louie and then going and watching Louie's comedy from years ago and going like, oh, wow, this guy's way different. Old days doing dolphin sounds and shit. What do you remember of like guys like say Burr and Dave Attell and all these guys? Like, do you see guys that were totally different back then and you thought they're not going to make it or I'm not going to make it, that kind of thing?
Always, I'm not going to make it. Always, I'm not going to make it. But you couldn't watch Dave or Bill or any of those guys, even when they were, Dave started, I think, a little before me and Bill after me by a couple of years. But even then, like when you're watching these guys develop and you're kind of developing as well, you knew they were fun. Like there was I can't think of anybody I was really friends with that I was like, that guy's not going to make it. Because I can't fake it like with that. I couldn't have been friends with people who I thought sucked because I wouldn't be able to hide it. And it wouldn't be a fun relationship to have. Like all of my friends from back in those days, I really respected, Keith and Bobby and Voss and Colin and Louie and like all the guys that I was friends with, the Cellar and Geraldo and Patrice. Like, Keith, I respected as comedians too. And it helps because you can't be really good friends with somebody in comedy who you think sucks. It's just too hard to fake that relationship, to fake the respect. You can't do it.
It's immediately like, you're like, God, I want to like this guy, but this act is brutal,
Yeah, so you can only get so close
Yeah.
to them. But yeah, you would see Bill. I mean, you knew he was great. I mean, it was obvious that he was a great performer and a great writer. Like, it just, and a tell is a tell. I mean, you couldn't,
Yeah.
even back then. I think the first time I worked with him, it was in the early '90s at a place called Poor Billy's in New Jersey. Vinny Brand, who owns the Stress Factory,
Oh
used to
yeah.
book it, and
Love him. He's
yeah, I
classic.
love Vinny too. Vinny
Yeah.
Vinny was always. I mean, I remember before the Stress Factory, the original club he used to book called the Clarion. It was a hotel, and Poor Billy's. I worked with David Tell. I worked with Bobcat Goldthwait during the LA riots.
Love
No,
him.
he can't. No, he canceled. I think I worked with the Tell instead or something like that. But it was whatever the LA riots were. I think that's when I first worked with Dave.
Let's get into some music. You and I absolutely love rock
Yeah.
music. And that's one of the things that I always was like, man, I'd love to go out on the road with Norton. We could just talk music, you know?
Yeah.
But at what age is your first concert, and who are the guys that you get into right away? It's got to be Kiss because you're like the
Yeah.
same age as me. But what concert do you go to first, and who are the early records you buy?
It was all Kiss.
Yeah.
The Village People too. I loved the Village People.
Yeah.
My first concert ever, and it's funny, I have a giant bus poster. That's like, I got it like it's literally longer than this. It was like went on the side of a bus. Kiss, Madison Square Garden, December 14, 15, 16. And I look back on it, I think it was 1977. I always thought it was after that, but maybe it was 77. I don't know. The Alive 2 tour.
Right.
And my dad, it was Rock and Roll Over tours the beginning of the year, I think, and the Live 2 tour was the second half of the year. And there's footage from December 14th or 15th, like from that night. But there's so much footage of Kiss. I'm dying to see footage of December 7th from MSG 1977 because I was at that with my father. And we bought the tickets in July. I think he gave them to me for my birthday in July. We had to
Wow.
buy them like that many months in advance.
Right.
And we were way up in the nosebleeds.
First
Um,
concert?
First concert was Kiss. And I always thought the Cheap Trick opened that,
Yeah, I
but
think they did. I think
but
they
not
did
that
do
show. I think
Oh.
the show I saw, because I've looked it up, it was some other band, but I can remember hearing either Surrender or I Want You to Want Me. And I think that maybe they covered it. Or maybe that song wasn't out yet. I don't remember. I always thought it was Cheap Trick, and I could be incorrect.
Yeah. I saw 78. It was a Day on the Green out in the Bay Area. They had these Day on the Green festivals, huge, that Bill Graham put on. It was Cheap Trick, AC/DC, Journey, Blue Oyster Cult, Ted Nugent.
Jesus.
Fucking nuts, man.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it's, I've listened to these bands from that day on, but I did see Kiss 79 Dynasty tour.
As we're talking, I just looked up to make sure I didn't mix up the date. December 16th was their final Dynasty tour shows in Toledo. So that was definitely in 1977 or 78 that I saw them. I think it was 77. And it's funny, AC/DC was opening the Kiss tour that I saw, but the run, like the dates right before the Garden. They didn't open the Garden, unfortunately. That was Bon Scott days too. I would love to have seen Bon Scott.
Yeah.
Even though at that time I don't think I care about AC/DC.
Yeah. I didn't care about AC/DC until that day. And then I remember everybody was into Angus. He was coming through the crowd, but I was into Bond because he had tattoos, and I'd never seen anybody other than my uncle with tattoos. So I was like, what the fuck is that guy? Just a vest, tattoos, just gnarly,
Yeah, I wish I had seen him. In hindsight, again, looking back, because I love, I love his, I love Bon Scott. I mean, I wish I had seen him live, but I didn't get into AC/DC in probably like the early '80s. Like Back in Black, I liked, but I never loved it. They're a band that I enjoy, but I never liked them the way I like Sabbath or Kiss.
Wow. Now I am a heavy Dio Sabbath fan.
Yeah, me too.
I absolutely loved the Dio era and saw that, both those tours, the Mob Rules and Heaven and Hell. Did you see him with Dio?
No, and I don't think I saw Ozzy until Motley Crue was opening on the Bark at the Moon tour. So I'm going to guess it was 83 or 84 was the first time I saw Ozzy live. But no, I never saw I never saw Dio Sabbath. I saw them as Heaven and Hell years later
Oh
in
yeah,
2007 when they
that was
taped at
great.
Radio City. They were amazing. They were
Yeah.
amazing. And Eddie Trunk let me in the studio, and he had all four guys in. With Vinny and Geezer Tony, and it was great. You know, I
Wow.
love that version of Sabbath.
It's so good. I think the Mob Rules is a masterpiece
It
record.
is. Yeah.
It's so insane. And then after Kiss, who do you go to see? Do you just start going to shows nonstop?
No, I mean, again, because I was young, the Village People, my dad took me to, and I remember Rush was touring, and tickets were $35. And this is probably 1981, and I went to 82, and I went to buy a $35 Rush ticket, knowing that I wouldn't go because I had no one to go with.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to go to the Garden by myself. I was a pussy. I didn't know what to do. It's funny. It's funny. I had one ticket to see Ozzy at 84, and I still have the ticket. On the train, they told us the show was canceled. We were all the way there, and they're like, "Oh, that show's canceled. Ozzy broke his leg." But I would love to know what actually happened. I don't think he broke his leg. Something must have happened.
Yeah.
Maybe he got arrested or he was fucked up. But yeah, there was an '84 Ozzy concert I was on my way to see, and then we found out that the show was not happening. And I also did the overnight thing where you stand out in front of a ticket place all night at the Garden.
Yeah.
And I did it. And I waited all night for tickets, and I finally get up to the window, and my mother had given me an expired credit card. So like a fucking dick, I had to go home with no tickets. Yeah, that was awful. That was a rough one. Expired credit card.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was a heartbreaker.
What was the Village People like? Were they lip syncing or singing?
Again, at that age, I don't remember. And I want to say, if I remember, I thought Sister Sledge was the opening act.
Oh yeah.
And I don't remember who, because I remember a long version of We Are Family, but I don't remember what the Village People did that night or what they sang, because Kiss was such a stronger memory for me. I just don't remember what they did. Or if they were.
I saw Sister Sledge at Disneyland on a summer vacation. They happened to be playing a free show in the middle of Tomorrowland. They just came out underground, that stage, and played. There they were. We Are Family. They're up there just rocking it for free.
And they have one song that people really like, and I don't think anybody cares about anything else that they do. I mean, again, not that I'm familiar with. I know one song, and it's a fucking big one, but besides that, I don't know. I'm looking them up as we talk, and I don't recognize any of their stuff except for that one song.
Yeah, and it was a huge hit. It's amazing that we're talking about it right now. Most people, there's a ton of one-hit wonders, but not like, oh yeah, We Are Family. Immediately, we know what we're talking about, Sister Sledge.
Well, most people, and it's funny, you hear songs like Radar Love.
Yeah.
And most people don't know who sang that, or most people who don't know, there was one I heard today. I was during my workout there. She was playing an 80s rock list, and there was the final countdown.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know who the fuck sings that. I know the song. I can't think of the band.
Yeah.
No idea.
They make money like Super Bowl commercials on that all the time, that fucking song.
Yeah. You hope the band makes it too, because they got so many bands get fucked on royalty deals and all that stuff. So you hope that those guys are getting some of that, I don't know how much it's worth at this point, but I imagine with all the ads and shit, they probably got fucked out of that money. They probably got fucked. Yeah. I mean, if Taylor Swift had to fight to get her shit back from Scooter Braun, they got fucked.
Absolutely.